Good morning, everyone. I had a few technical issues there. Really delighted to welcome you all to our panel on women and sustainability. I'm Rachel McClelland, the founder of Planet Shine, and I'm absolutely over the moon to welcome some incredible friends and colleagues to this discussion. There will be a little time for questions at the end, but firstly, I'd like to hand over to the panel to introduce themselves. So can I start with you first, Joanna?
Oh, yeah. Hi. Thanks, Rachel. My name's Joanna Jensen, and I am the founder of Child's Farm, which is the UK's leading baby and child toiletries business. And recently we have launched Farmology, which is sensitive skincare for adults. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Helen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you. I am the founder of One Blue Marble. It's an organisation that's supporting a variety of different organisations with their fundraising and awareness raising, largely charities. I work with Sea Shepherd UK, the Health and Wellbeing Trust, the Sustainable Food Trust, and also with the business Ecotricity and their football club Forest Green Rovers.
Amazing, thank you. And Sophie, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Lovely to be here. My name's Sophie Brooks. I run a purpose consultancy called Fit for Purpose, which I founded in 2018 after having worked in sustainability strategy and comms for the previous 13 years. Our work is primarily focused on helping businesses accelerate the behaviours and actions that they need to take to create positive social and environmental impact.
Wonderful, thanks. And Antoinette, over to you.
Hi there. Thank you very much for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is Antoinette Vermilye. I am the co-founder of the Gallifrey Foundation, which is a marine conservation organization, but also the co-founder of She Changes Climate, which is a campaign to put more women at the top of the UK COP26 leadership team.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, so let's get started. Goal number 5 of the Sustainable Development Goals is gender equality, and I think everybody on this panel will agree that there's an awful long way to go. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the impact of the climate emergency on women, as well as women in sustainability, and how women in top-tier leadership roles are absolutely critical to a just transition. So first of all, Antoinette, I'd love to come to you. Women, as we know, are disproportionately suffer the impacts of disasters, the climate emergency, severe weather events because of cultural norms and the inequitable distribution of roles and resources, especially in developing countries. Can I ask you to share some thoughts on this, how women are impacted and what we need to do in terms of achieving balance and achieving an equitable society?
Okay, so that's a two-pronged question. So,
no question.
So the first part, yes, unfortunately, just because of the nature of, many of the countries that are low income or middle income countries, it tends to be that the women are usually at the lower economic stage in those environments. And therefore, they're the first ones to suffer. So let's just translate that into the fact that you go to a water well that dries up, you have to walk further, you have to come back. Climate change means sea level rises, and that basically means that women who can't swim usually drown. In fact, there are organizations trying to teach young girls to swim. But more importantly than that, it's things like food insecurity and all the things for which women have the primary role in either doing the farming or cooking indoors. They can, suffer from indoor pollution. They suffer the health impact. So basically, at this point, we're talking about women as victims. However, the reality is also a lot of these women are incredibly resourceful and incredible solutioneers, and their voices are not heard. And I'll just give you an example that it's not necessarily climate change, but it will show you the impact of not having women at a place. About 20 years ago, there was a terrible earthquake in India where thousands of homes were destroyed. And when they came to rebuild them, they built, again, about 100,000 homes, but without kitchen facilities, because no women were at the top in part of the planning and the advisory committee to actually mention it. So the important thing about perspective and that balanced input means that we end up with an imbalanced output. And so that is one of the biggest problems that's facing women at the top of many of these decisions affecting gender and climate change, which is ridiculous because we're actually more than half the planet. In fact, I just read a statistic today that I think only, 21% of 196 delegations had been led by women at the UNCCC conference in 2019. That was just basically 41 women. I mean, we've got things. Actually, may I just do something, please, Rachel? I'm going to pass you over to Bianca, who's just come on, and I'd rather that she spoke to this. But anyway, Bianca.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much. Great to have you, Bianca. We're having some technical issues. Would you like to just introduce yourself, Bianca, and just talk a little bit about your thoughts on how we can achieve gender equality or equity and achieve balance and equitable society? So Antoinette's just teed you up in terms of the issues and how women are more impacted by the climate emergency. But yeah, over to you. No pressure.
Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for waiting so patiently. I'm delighted to take over from Antoinette, who I've had the pleasure of working with over the last few months. So how can we achieve that parity? How can women get equity? Because we need it so badly in this day and age, right? We're facing the greatest existential crisis we have ever faced. And yet women are nowhere near where they should be represented at the top of politics, top of business, and in international governance. The only way to achieve what we want to achieve, which is a more prosperous society and a solution to all the environmental challenges that we see today, is to get women into leadership. For that, we have to move though from a state of just talking, which we've seen and which I think has interesting parallels to the climate crisis, where we have seen a lot of talk and no action, to actually putting our words into action. That means, for example, the UN, that has worked on gender parity issues for many decades, has to show that they are serious about gender equality and equity for women. That means they really need to put their words into action. That means we need to see implementation of policies, not just better policies and constantly improved policies, but real implementation of policies. And what I would like to see are firm commitments from governments and existing corporate leaders as well on bringing women into leadership. We need it today. If we miss this chance, it really means the end of our prosperity.
Thanks so much, Bianca, much appreciated. So it would be remiss of me not to, of course, talk about biodiversity and the role of women. Nature has to be the starting point, of course. If we don't have a planet, there won't be any human race, no ecosystems, no business. Women, as we know, tend to be the caregivers, the land managers, the resource users, and as such, we need an equal voice in decision making. Helen, I know this is something you feel very strongly about. Can you share some thoughts on the importance of women when it comes to nature and biodiversity, and any thoughts you have on what potentially needs to change?
Sure. Thank you, Rachel. And great to hear that those first introductions as well. I think from the perspective of nature and biodiversity, people forget that's the underlying nature of everything we do. It's implicit to all the things that we do. And interesting, I represent Sea Shepherd. I also represent Catalyse Change. Now, Catalyse Change is an organisation supporting 16 to 24-year-olds, empowering them to become the future leaders. And what has been really interesting is that those young people who might want to work in the biodiversity world, they often think that's where they want to work, in marine conservation, in wildlife trusts, in nature conservation. And what they perhaps don't understand is that they can have such an influence within business. And I think we need to, as a nation, we need to help people understand, young women understand, that there are roles within business that they can use the skills that often they've learnt while they've been at university, particularly in the last year or so, they're sort of feeling very lost and not knowing where they might go after this. That those different skills that they've learnt can be applied within a business. And I feel really strongly, the likes of, I do work for Equitable, a green energy company. I've worked with lots of organic food companies, beauty companies, textile companies in the past. There are lots and lots of opportunities that slightly go amiss because there's an expectation that if you're to work within sustainability and to support the environment, you've got to go down a very narrow channel of opportunity. And what we need to do is help people understand that business has to stand up to the responsibility of now thinking differently. And we need those solutioneers, which I love that term, to be the young people of the future. And we need to, in some shape or form, find a way of engaging them with business that help them understand that their skills will support a regeneration of agriculture, a regeneration of the way that food and farming is actually run, how we protect our oceans, how we provide our energy, how we travel, how we eat. We often talk about energy, transport and food being 80% of our carbon emissions. If we can help young people understand the importance of that, I think that's key. And I would also say that education undeniably is key. So we need to start very, very young and start to really reshape the way that we educate people or young people about nature, in nature and from nature to really make that difference.
Wonderful, thank you so much. That takes me really nicely into women and sustainable business. And I want to spend a little time exploring women's experience in business. I know mine, the challenges I faced as a woman in business, and it has been because I am a woman in business, that some of the challenges have arisen. And I'd love to explore how our approach and the challenges we face differ to that of men. So coming to you, Joanna, you're the founder and CEO of a very successful business that is, your vision in terms of sustainability and circular models from the conversations we've had, you're kind of at the sort of Patagonia interface level of that sort of moonshot thinking. What would you say are the greatest challenges that you faced to date as a woman in business?
Thank you, Rachel, for that very kind introduction. Well, I'm going to be a bit controversial here and say I haven't experienced any because I'm a woman. And it concerns me that so many of you have. I don't look at this as gender at all. I'm driven, I'm commercial, I know what I believe in. I've created a brand which is absolutely adored within this country, and I'm a huge, great tub thumper. I don't think my sex has got anything to do with it. I'm a gobby old bag, and if I want something done, I will get it done. And I think we have to be careful here, because I don't want to be seen as a victim because I'm a woman. I want to be seen as an innovator or a solutioneer, regardless of my gender. What does concern me more than anything else, and this is what I'm utterly passionate, and I'm afraid I'm going to go off-piste here, is that we are absolutely, you come and work here, you have to live and breathe sustainability. You have to understand that the impact that we have on this planet, particularly as a baby and child brand, we'd be absolute twits if we thought we could pump out products for the next generation in virgin plastic without giving two hoots to the environment. Everything we do here, we live and breathe it. We've got bees in the garden. We've got about 40 recycling bins downstairs. We've got compost bins in the car park. It's the way that every business should be. And when you look at a Tesco's that sticks up with multiple ring roads and new traffic, where are their solar panels? Where is their ground source heat pump? Where is their anaerobic digester? Nowhere to be seen. So there's some fundamental things that we have to change. And yes, I do agree that 50% of the population is totally unrepresented. Don't even get me started on HRT. Where there we are pumping male level testosterone all over us. But, where the fundamental issue is, and I absolutely support Helen here, is I've got a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old. I go through their school. There are bins overflowing with mixed waste. I asked to see both of their school sustainability manifestos, their policy, the way of behaviour. There's nothing. Unless you are doing geography GCSE, No one in that school environment is teaching you a damn thing, frankly. And that's where we need to start. And if that was one thing we could do, treat sustainability like any other NGO. You go to the kids, they take it back to the village, they change the habits. And that's where we need to change. I mean, my lot don't even know who Greta Thunberg is. And, you know, I go through the bins every night at home. This is where we need to change. The fact that I can see such a shambles when they're at school, there's no thought or care. I mean, the fact that my girls actually turned around and said that for 6 months during COVID, they weren't going to buy anything new. They were going to do make do and mend. I nearly keeled over. But it's not in that real passion, you know, do you know what? We're the ones that's going to be living in the desert. So actually we're going to do something about it. Because the environment that they're in for the majority of their day is not supporting the passion that you and I have and all of us have about making this change. And I think, you know, what I would love to see is that us passionate women are being perceived as just being passionate and not being perceived as being passionate / hysterical / slightly psychotic women. We're passionate about our planet and we want the youth of today to share that passion. And for us here, it's reassuring for me that there are so many that come in and align with our views about sustainability, but I would say they're the exception to the rule. And that's what we need to change. And, you know, I'm in, anyone's got a, you know, tub thumping department that they want someone who's going to say how rubbish this is for their children. I'm right up there because I keep on saying it to both my girls' school ad infinitum. They're sick of the sound of my voice. But if that means that instigates change, great.
Can I open that up to everybody? What do you all think needs to happen? You know, I mean, obviously there's a sort of top-down, bottom-up approach, isn't there? But what needs to happen to change this sort of the root cause and to, you know, change the education system? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I was invited onto a panel at the tail end of last year at something called the Youth Climate Summit. I don't know if any of you are familiar. It's a fantastic event aimed at sort of from year 10 upwards, I think, so high school children, and it was global. And the panel that I was on was about how all careers were going to be green careers in the future. And I think this reversing the thinking, you know, as you said, Helen, about the narrowness, what I think needs to happen, and somebody's just put in the chat, core curriculum and embedded in every subject is where we need to see sustainability. And we were trying to tell the kids on our session, you know, if you want to be an architect, that's great, be an architect. It's all going to be about green and buildings, you know, and sustainable buildings. If you want to go, you know, into engineering, it's all going to be about engineering for the climate transition. You know, every career that you can think of, every path that you could take will have sustainability embedded at its heart. And it's completely right that that's not how our education system is preparing children for yet. And I don't think that the higher education system is there yet either. You know, it's the same thing in business. Take it out of the silo, move it into the middle, integrate all these issues, not just have it in geography, as Joanna said, integrate.
Yeah. And you know, that's bins in every corridor. You know, that's you know, get the mind thinking this is normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, if I could jump in also. Yeah. I've been very impressed to see what the new US administration has done on this, because what they've done is they've really put the environment and sustainability at the heart of all their governmental policies. All the departments are singing from the same song sheet, and that is what we need to see here as well. It's not enough to occasionally release the occasional policy and say, you know, we might do this, we might do that, with no specific targets set. Every single UK department needs to also make sure, every ministry needs to make sure that we're singing from the same song sheet.
And I think, what about a sustainability GCSE? You know, it's to sustain, and it's compulsory. You know, I mean, I find that my children have to do French. I mean, neither of them are particularly talented in that department, but I would scrap it in a heartbeat, give them sustainability and environmental, and know that it's part of, and it is part of every living, breathing moment that they do. And every GCSE has a whole section about the impact from what you're doing. That people shouldn't be looking for environmental roles, as Sophie really articulated well, it should be ingrained in every role.
Yeah. We have a very interesting situation in my world of working at Ecotricity. We're actually developing an eco-education curriculum. And one of the demands has come from, strangely, from the Football League, because we have a football club. So we've taken quite an improbable environment, if you like, and they've asked us, because Forest Green Rovers, who I look after, who is classed as the greenest football club in the world, and oddly is attracting a lot of attention, has asked us to write a framework for other football clubs to become environmentally, supportive of what we're doing. And we have an education program for each football club that has a community trust, and that's 92 football clubs in the English Football League, who will take on this education and then roll it out through their schools. So it's taking something that might be interesting on a different dimension like football, but making it engaging and interesting for young people to come on board. So we do have that as an option going forward. The other thing I honestly think is we need a minister who's responsible for environment that actually crosses over all of the different constituents of what's happening. So joined up thinking around travel, food, and energy. It's just not there, and it's why nothing actually comes together. Education, all of these things need to be properly managed. And going to COP26, we should go asking for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I love the idea of the football framework. I hope Manchester United, my team, pay attention, because they're trailing Manchester City really badly. Breaks my heart. Sophie, you're a huge advocate of business driving change. Where do you think women come into this? And based on your experience, how can we use our skills, our networks, our traits to drive change at a global level?
Well, I'm a little bit with Joanna on this one, in the sense that I'm really fortunate to have been in the unusual position of having worked across two sectors, PR and then sustainability, which are both really strong in terms of female representation, including at leadership levels. And working in PR for many years, I came to understand, I suppose, the fundamental power that business has, and particular brands have. As influencers, so power to change behaviour, influence opinion, but also to enable fundamental social change, or in the context of the economic world, systems change, as we're increasingly describing it. So much, I now think that it's the world's most intractable social environmental issues can't be solved without business playing a significant role. Women are also strongly represented in the social change sector. There are lots of NGOs with environmental and social focuses that are run by women, and a high percentage of third sector and sustainability sector overall. I couldn't find any stats on this, but I did look. But my sense is it's quite a female-dominated industry, and my interest is, why is that? I think there's a couple of reasons that spring to mind. One is that perhaps women tend to be more intrinsically motivated. That's motivated by internal goals rather than simply by extrinsic goals like financial reward, recognition, etc. There's plenty of research to back that up. But I also think a more significant reason is that women are well placed to enable change, because we're outsiders. Although at 51% of the population, we're not a minority group, we've obviously had centuries of underrepresentation in all areas of public life. So women don't necessarily identify as being part of the establishment. The idea of creating fundamental change, challenging the status quo, whether that's challenging shareholder primacy or putting a monetary value on ecosystem services, or whatever it is that requires a rethink, it doesn't feel as threatening, perhaps, in some ways to women as to men. And I also think that at the heart of system change, there is a real desire to fight for a better, fairer world. And I think you just have to have an understanding of the voiceless, the underprivileged, minority groups, and even thinking of nature and the environment as a voiceless stakeholder. And of course, if you've spent centuries being discriminated against in all walks of life, as women have, then I think, again, you perhaps have more empathy with that position.
Mm.
Absolutely. Bianca and Antoinette, I just would love you to respond to that, because you've spent the best part of a year battling through She Changes Climate and lobbying the British government to, bring women into senior leadership roles for the most important event of our lifetimes, COP26. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the current state of play?
So I have to say, yeah, when I started looking into it, I was absolutely horrified to really, it was a revelation. Here I am, white, educated, studied law and so on, supported all my life throughout my career and also at home, and had to realize that actually women are not where I am today at all. For example, the environmental sector, and it's interesting to look at that because I work in it, is the second least diverse sector after farming. We're talking about ethnic diversity here, but it just shows, that we're nowhere near the diversity goals that we have, and some have also pledged to set themselves. If you look at, for example, corporate leadership, I'm sure you're all aware, only 7% of FTSE 100 companies had a female chief executive officer. If you look at the FTSE 250, they're even less. We still have a gender, pay gap that we're all painfully aware of. If you look at political leadership in the UK, for example, we have twice as many male as female MPs worldwide. 119 countries have never had a woman leader. Women only represent a quarter of all parliamentary seats worldwide and a fifth of ministers worldwide. At the G7 meeting that's coming up in June, there's one woman going to be speaking for us. And at global governance level, I don't know if Antoinette mentioned earlier, but when the COP26 team was announced, the COP is the international climate negotiation that the UK is hosting this coming November. Not a single woman was on the leadership team. Now, what does that tell us? We often hear that slogan of the race to zero, and I always say, well, what does that mean? We've achieved a race to zero women? Really? And that's 2021. I mean, these are sobering statistics. Absolutely sobering statistics, and it's not just the UK that didn't announce any women on their delegations. The UN, when we hosted a summit together with the UK last November, didn't notice that there wasn't a single woman in the main lineup of speakers, for example. And if you look into STEM, if you look into VC funding, etc., you just see women are literally in the single digits.
Is this because women aren't applying for these positions that they're not applying for these roles? Because it's very different if there's sort of 10 jobs going and equal numbers of men and women apply for it and the 10 jobs go to men. Why are they being rejected? Is it because they're not as well qualified as the other parties, or is it
no, women
are they just not applying?
No, women are highly qualified. But of course, there's no easy answer to this. There's a whole range of factors that contribute to this, But I've had female scientists who decided not to stay scientists because they felt so discriminated in science, turn entrepreneurs, say to me, there must be a policy for not appointing women. I just can't understand. Or I spoke to a very, very senior civil servant here, a woman who's leading a very important environmental organization. He also said to me, I just don't understand. Why are women not given more of a voice? I mean, if you look at, for example, Twitter statistics, women are not retweeted as much as men. There is an inherent bias, you see, that we're all suffering from, all of us, even women, but also the men. And what we need to do, I think Sheryl Sandberg was great in writing her book about, really calling for women to lean in. And she outlines very, very intelligently how we are all biased and then not really doing what we could do and not achieving what we could achieve. But at the same time, I want to really reach out to all the men who are listening to this and invite them to reach out to women. Yeah, get them into business, vote for them, because together we will achieve better results.
And what do you think why is there such disconnect and inequality? I mean, does it just go back to the fact that we have been living in an age-old patriarchal system, and we are all wired to kind of, see men as a dominant species almost,
Yeah, it's historical. It's historical.
Sorry, when you actually said something about, we've been talking about education as one of the key levers of change. We've been talking about women, but what we haven't actually addressed is who's in power, who's there now, and why has that not changed? I, as a mother, I have seen my children. I swore that as I grew up, life would change, that there would be more women at the top. And when we got involved with She Changes Climate, it is shocking to see not just women, but gender diversity, that there is such and it's basically because that is the current status quo. I'm not sure that any of this is done deliberately. It's just, who do I know, who do I like, and who looks like me? And that is perpetuated the whole time. And we need to really change that. I mean, if you think about it, the COP26, we have tried different approaches with them. We tried to do the reasonable, the diplomatic approach. We sort of tried to say, look, okay, we understand that the system that you have created is maybe a barrier to making those changes, but that has actually changed, because if they cannot look out of that structure and think of tangential creative solutions, how can these be the people actually looking for tangential creative solutions for an urgent climate crisis? We haven't got the right thinkers in place. We tried adding pressure. And yes, we did generate more change that way, because we got actually 3 women were appointed around the time that we launched. But, there are so many things that are just like, well, that's the way it is, maybe next time. And it's always kicking the can down the road. So as long as men are the default, women are the exception. And that is what we're trying to say. I often say, I need to wear glasses. So I need glasses to see clearly. And I think in the same way, we kind of need to know that, if men don't participate and open their eyes to proactive change, they're not going to notice it. And it basically, I think it's you, Bianca, who gave me a figure that men. The UK showed that when men don't participate, progress is 30%, but when men do participate, it's 3 times higher. So that's really huge.
So what are the? Sorry, Helen, go on.
No, I just feel, I mean, if you take a sort of single unit of maybe a business, and you look at who runs the business, very often the person at the top knows what they want already, so they will find the people who agree with them. They will find the people who will make that happen. They won't find people who challenge them, because they know what they want. And I think that's there's a fear factor to that, and it's perhaps something that has to be overcome. It has to be this particularly with COP, but other areas, is about being brave and being bold and being open to other ideas. And I think what happens is that people who come with solutions are very, very successful in what they do, but what is happening is there's a lid being kept on everything, and we're not allowed to press up through that lid and come up with the ideas that will make change. So somehow or other we need those entrepreneurs, those business leaders who may be male, to think differently. And there are some amazing female leaders out there, of course, there's examples here, but it's trying to alleviate the fear. And I think some of the issues around climate change are that it's overly complicated in people's minds. Obviously, there's a commercial interest. There's all sorts of reasons why people don't want to go down this route, because they want to make their money doing the thing that they've done forever. And whether that trashes the planet or not, they're going to do it. But we do have leaders who will think differently. And wouldn't it be amazing if we got a certain group of businesses together and say, come on board with us, take a female leader with you, and maybe some young women who want to get involved, and give them the opportunity. Something like a youth board with women on it might work. But I think there's an information element to be dealt with. People don't necessarily understand what they need to do, and then that boldness that needs to come from leaders.
And if I can just add to that, I work with a lot of big businesses, and I've been working with an energy company in the last year, and this issue. So somebody mentioned STEM, and STEM, the fact that we've got very few women, young women going into STEM careers and studying the right subjects at school to go in that direction. Working with this company, the first time we presented their materiality assessment to them, which identified that they have a diversity and inclusion issue because they're so heavily dominated in their company and in their sector, whole sector actually, by men, white males. They really couldn't see what they could do about that. They didn't understand. They couldn't think far enough down the chain. We don't get the candidates applying. There aren't the right skills coming through. This is where we enter. In other words, as though they're just entering into the sort of conversation and the whole challenge at that level, not understanding that they have an apprenticeship scheme. They have they do work with in schools actually in training programs. There's a lot that you can do, and you have to go much further down, to the track to start. Businesses need to get involved earlier on in these processes to try and encourage and educate and change that dynamic and change what's coming through. And so I think that's, building on what you're saying, Helen, it's not only that they know what they want, but they just think it's not. A lot of businesses don't see it is part of their role to try and get involved. It is what I call the root cause of some of these issues.
Yeah.
I compare it often, and it's quite helpful to have this analogy. I feel we are trying to sail a boat around the world with one eye firmly patched up. Now, you might not crash the boat, but the chances of crashing are pretty high. And why? Because you're excluding a whole other viewpoint. And that is what we're doing at the moment. With the system we have and with the power structures we are currently accepting.
I'd also say that the other point about all of this, which is my role in marine conservation, is the science is telling us we don't have time. So to educate the whole generation, you're waiting 30 years. Of the 30 years, they do not exist. And therefore, it's why this has to be literally a multi-pronged approach. Someone told me quite radically, at the beginning, I was very like, wow. They said the true transformation can only take place when those in power relinquish it. And in a way, that's really what we are looking at. You talked about we can't find women to take a job. Well, then mentor a woman or have a co-director. Find ways where women are seen by other women. So the wake is created. You're actually creating that path for younger women to actually see those positions filled. I mean, these are proactive things you can do. Meetings shouldn't be allowed to proceed if they're not 50-50 women. If a man is asked to join a board, look and say, what's your balance with men and women? It almost is at the point now, we can't wait for this organic transformation because we've been waiting. It now has to really be notched up. And all of this is when we talk about this, it is really, as Bianca has said, it's the perspectives. Because women, in fact, right now, again, the latest science is showing that it's the nature-based solutions, it's the indigenous solutions that were poo-pooed about 50 years ago post-war because they weren't shiny and technological, are the ones that are actually proving to have really long-term benefits for the soil, the air, the oceans, and the planet.
Absolutely. We've got 5 minutes to go. If anybody does have any questions, please quickly put them in the chat. But as we wind this up, I would like to go around all of you in the panel and just ask for your thoughts, actions, anything you think that we, people listening to this, should be thinking about and acting upon. You know, what are the little things that we can all do to push this agenda and to help create a more equitable planet? So, Sophie, can I start with you, please?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I think I saw somebody earlier in the chat saying something about looking for courses to move into sustainability. We mentioned already the thing about careers, and it's not about green careers, it's about every career having a green element. So I encourage everyone, there's so much information now, you cannot switch the radio on without hearing a story that has, you know, what a sustainability angle. I mean, you know, the last 15 years, there's no comparison, you know, so the information is out there, it's becoming more to, you know, everyday absorption of information. So, you know, a Seaspiracy was a mainstream documentary. We all saw it. It wasn't on some weird channel 1700 lines down on your telly. So I would just say, educate yourselves. There's so much information out there, and talk about these issues, because if it becomes part of the common parlance, then, you know, more women can hopefully get involved.
Absolutely. Joanna, any final thoughts from you?
I'm just going to be a bit more gender neutral, but I'm just going to say, from my perspective, 2 things that everyone should do. 1, put an extra bin in your bathroom so you recycle all your waste there. If everyone did that, let's just think about the change that would make. And vote with your feet. If you're buying stuff that is badly packaged, overly packaged, Amazon springs to mind here, stop doing it. Stop doing it. And, you know, if you don't like, I mean, my eldest daughter goes to a co-educational school, one of the top 10 schools in the country. We picked it because the headmistress, the master, is a woman. And there is a real reason behind we made that choice. So vote with your feet. You know, we can all talk till we're blue in the face, but actually make an absolute decision to make a change within your life and your environment. And don't be frightened about saying why you've made that choice. But again, you know, give people insight into that, but don't browbeat them, because it's much easier to lure them into the trap than it is to just march them straight in.
Amazing. Thank you. Helen?
Thank you. Yeah, there are many things I think I would call on businesses, all people who are here today and far beyond, to think about what they're doing and how they're embracing the environment, and be much bolder about their ambition, and get people involved who are passionate. And there always will be people passionate in a business. Find them and engage them in what we want to do, because they will provide some of those solutions, and they'll be passionate about it, and hopefully that will, you know, inspire their colleagues as well.
Amazing. Antoinette, any final thoughts?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much for having had me on this talk. The second are really 3 points for everyone. And the first is, when whatever you're doing, keep asking yourself, has it got everyone's perspectives included in this, in my thoughts, in what I'm doing? Okay, so that it is an all-round, and this is 360 degrees. This is not, you know, 50-50, it's everyone. It'll make for a better output. Second thing is perception. How is your product, your business perceived in terms of gender equality, parity? And what can you proactively do about that? And you know, so that's it's easy enough. And the final thing is space, and that's something, that's the legacy part. The part is that we need to see women like all these wonderful women here at the top, so that our daughters and young women can say, my gosh, this is possible. Those are the 3 things that I would really.
Thank you. And final word to you, Bianca.
Yeah, I'd say to everyone who's listening, focus on women, focus on promoting women, focus on voting for women, so that we can achieve a more sustainable future. Keep it simple.
Thank you all so much to you, Joanna, Sophie, Helen, Bianca, Antoinette. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute honour spending this time with you. And thank you to everybody who's joined and watched and listened and commented. And thank you to Alec and Catherine for setting up this amazing event. And yeah, good luck. Have a lovely rest of week, everybody. And yeah, look forward to seeing you all again soon. Right.
Thanks.
Nice to see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.